Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, everybody, depending on what time you're watching this video. My name is John Matanda Tshipama from Concordia University of Nebraska. Today, we'll talk about my class, the MBA 632, the cross-cultural management. My instructor's name is Marcelle Wilson Davis. Marcelle Wilson Davis is my instructor and will focus on my final project, that is the mergers and acquisition between Air France and KLM. We'll talk about Air France and KLM. This project was made because the story between these two companies that made it mergers and acquisition was one of the top in 2004. Back to 2004, the two company decide to work together. As you know, company decide to work together to raise their money and make a good business. That was the case for the two companies at the same time, at the first time, because they made very good money at the beginning. As long as people was working good, they brought new technologies and they could do more than they could make if they was not working together. Now, the problem was now about managing people. You know, when you got two different people, it's like in marriage. When you are married, you should deal with two people. I mean, yourself and the other person is coming with your wife or your husband. You should make all together to be one. And you should have now the new culture. It's the same when two companies deal together, as was the case for Air France, where two culture was working now together, not just for being friend or for what. It was first for making business, and secondly, to get more money. But the first problem that the two team had to deal with was about language. In company, in the business, all thing we can do is to communicate. And when we try to communicate, we should have one language. But if we don't have one, we should have someone who can translate. But it's okay to speak to the person instead of speaking through the translator. And that was the first problem that the two management team had to deal with. Air France, all the people were speaking French, and for the KLM was speaking Dutch because it's from that country. And they discussed a lot. And at the end, they decide to keep all the all teams should keep their own language, their own official language. If there is a joint meeting where they should speak, they was using the translator to make everybody feel good and understand what they are talking about. But it was not just that the problem. The second problem was about the culture. In France, they used to respect the supervisor, coordinator, the boss, and so on, because they can just call him by his name. They can call him Frank. If his name is, for example, his name is Davis, they can just call him Davis. They should say Sir Davis or Boss Davis. They have to put some adjective before the name. But the Dutch was not like that. But Dutch has American culture. They just call by the name. They are most friendly with the boss than French was. Than French were. That was the first problem. The second problem, sorry, about those two people, those two companies, because it was difficult for the Dutch to call a French boss by putting an adjective before his name. He was just going and called the name, but for France was not respectful, it was disrespectful. It was the second problem that the management team tried to deal with, to see how to accept the way the other one are trading together. And the other problem was about friendship. For the Dutch, when they come to the work, is to work. Lunchtime, they just eat. If they're not eating in the office, Maybe they can be outside and eat, no in break room, because for them they are not coming to work to make friends. They come to work. That's say if they need friend, it's out of work. But France, for French people, the lunch time and during the breaks, that was the good time to talk to each other and try to make a good relation and try to make a good to know each other more. And that was difficult because Dutch was just sitting on the corner if they can sit in there or they can be in the break room during a lunch time or a break time. They were sitting in a corner and French was talking together. That was like two groups in one. And the other problem was about how they was paying people the salary. KLM was paying more than Air France did. That was very difficult because the pilot for Air France was paying less than the pilot of KLM. Now the manager team, as long as it was now a new team and everybody should work together and have the same salary, it was difficult for them to see it as long as it was the startup of the business working together, changing everything, projects how they can pay this and that, to have the same way to pay everybody in the same way. That was very good, a very very big difficult, and it was a hard problem to see how they could pay everybody the same way. But at the end, they decided to pay everybody the same way. Then there was many problem even about the body language because French used to speak by pointing and so on, but Dutch are very quiet when they speak. They used to listen instead of speaking. And in this case, what we see here, all above this, to go over all those problems, what we can advise, what I can advise to the management team, what I can advise to the leader is to not deal with the personal culture because the culture is not about people. Culture is about a person. Person is the one who is the main role in the whole company. And then the management team, the leader should deal with a person in particular instead of going with culture. And to overcome all this, we should have a strong and a very strong organization culture. The organization culture is making together all the two cultures. As long as someone is coming, when someone come, it came and it should be under the organization's cultures. And to end my speech for tonight, I will say there is no individual culture, but there is one culture. And the culture is not leading by itself, but the leader should lead the culture. And once someone is coming to work, as was the case for Air France and KLM, when they come to work, they should have a common culture. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I think that was a very helpful. Thank you, and thank you again.